You are listening to the SDSU Football Podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your hosts Andre Hagverdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the SDSU Football Podcast. I am your host, Andre Hagverdian, and joined, as always, by Paul Garrison. On our last episode, we played part one of our conversation with offensive coordinator and quarterback coach Jeff Hecklinski at San Diego State as part of our season preview. That discussion centered around the quarterbacks, which obviously Coach Hecklinski plays a big part of as also the quarterbacks coach. In this episode, we are going to talk to Coach Heck about the running backs and the wide receivers, obviously two critical components, the skill position players of the offense, and to see where he thinks those units are at and what improvements and adjustments they're looking to make, if any, for the upcoming season. Hope you guys enjoy this conversation.
So jump into the running back room. The big post-spring transfer, Keenan Christon, came into the program. He didn't play a lot because of a suspension last year. Just what does he bring to the offense? And, there's anytime someone is suspended, there's always those questions about why, what is, those kind of issues. You just speak to the kind of person he is and then what he brings to the team going into next year.
Right. Well, obviously, he's a tremendous athlete and especially a speed athlete. His track numbers speak for themselves. And what he did at USC when he was on the field, was ultra impressive with the limited amount of reps and time that he had. Things were vetted here, and that's not in my world. That's, with Coach Hoke and everything that's going on outside that. We look for him to be a game changer, and we look for him to add to the competitiveness, not only in the room, but of the offense and on the field. And the more athletes and the more multiple pieces that we can continue to bring in, that we can move around and put the ball in their hands, and at any point in time they have the ability to go score, the better we're going to be. And the better we're going to be throughout the course of a game and throughout the course of a season. You talk about, returnability and special teams. You talk about, now all of a sudden, you add another game changer that takes pressure off of everybody else that's around them, because that's somebody else that they have to game plan and scheme for, so, ultimately we're going to continue to recruit the best players to come in here to help us to win, regardless of position. And so from that standpoint, he continues to add to that mentality, and that mentality of of filling the offense full of game changers that can score at any time. And you've seen that in how we've recruited since I've been here over the last year and a half to 2 years.
So, how do you see him? Is he a T? Is he an F?
I think we got to see. He's been working with us for a month,
right?
And there's. I think you look at Terrell Shavers, and there's some rust Terrell and us and working through, we had to knock off. Do you know what I'm saying? Because, you go through phases as you're going through those transfer processes where, you're just not, you're in shape, but you're not in football shape. And then you get into football shape, but you're not in San Diego State shape. And there's a difference there. And that's where I think you saw Terrell about midseason really start to take off. With Keenan, it's going to be that same process. We're getting him into shape, and then through fall camp, we'll get him into San Diego State shape. And then we'll know more as we come through camp and as we watch him play. A big part of this is we got to let him go out there and play. We got to watch him play, and he's got to, get his feelings back and get his football sense back. And we got to give him the opportunity to do that before we make any decisions or judgments on anything. But believe me, we'll fit him in, and it's my job, and I love it. I love the pressure of it. It's my job to get the ball into all their hands, And then that pressure falls on Braxton to be that type of player and Will to be those type of players to be able to get it to him.
Yeah, we had a chance to speak to both Chance Bell and Jordan Bird since spring camp ended. Both talked about their decisions to come back because they were eager to show that they could do more, have a bigger role, and also what they could do at the next level. What have you seen from both of them throughout the past 6 months?
Leadership. I think the calmness that comes with being, that kind of super senior, that kind of been there, done that. I think the same thing we talked about with Braxton. I think when I first got here and through a good portion or at least half of last year, there was a lot of us, including myself, wanting to show, hey, this is who we can really be. And this is who we want to be. And then I think, you get to a point where you know who you are and you just have a belief and trust and a confidence in yourself as to who you are as that person. And you know that you're able to go out there and be successful and play. And that's what I think you see from both of them. They're warriors when they work out. They're tough. They're tough-minded. They're in great shape. I think Chance is, I want to say Chance was 195 when I left a couple of weeks ago. And you can tell, but yet he's moving at a rate where he was when he was like 175, 180. And so, Jordan is always fast. I think we have more fast guys on the field now that can compete with Jordan. And that's a great thing because Jordan, it's not that Jordan's gotten slower. It's that everybody else is catching up and getting faster. And so that's, again, that competitiveness that we're talking about where Jordan's not going to be the fastest guy on the field because I'm going to compete with him to be the fastest guy on the field. Well, that's making Jordan better. And so there's just a lot of great things to having them back and their roles are going to expand, and that's where you look at Chance and, Chance and I were talking during spring ball and I said, what's the goal? I said, is the goal to be the starting tailback? And he goes, absolutely. Well, then we're going to be the starting tailback because that's my goal for you then. And now your role is expanded in being that starting tailback and being that guy now. And then building the pieces around him to give him all those opportunities to go do that, but yet then not kill him when he's on the field. I think that's what we've done a great job. And I think we did a great job with that with Greg a year ago of keeping him fresh, keeping him healthy, so we can get through 13, 14 games as we progress through the course of the season.
Both of them also talked about wanting to and expecting to be a bigger part of the passing game. Outside of some screen passes and shovel passes to Jordan last year, the running backs, at least production-wise in the passing game, were fairly non-existent. Is that more of a point of emphasis going into this year? Could we potentially see some two-back sets where one of them could motion out and run her out from the slot? Things like that.
That's a lot of the ways when you look back. I mean, if you're able to go back and look at our film, that's how we used Jordan a year ago, where we would be in a two-back personnel grouping with Gregor Chance at tailback and Jordan kind of has a hybrid that moved all over the place. I think one of the things we can do a better job of, and that we worked on throughout the course of spring and are doing this summer, is making them more route runners. I thought early we had a lot of that in, but I didn't think from a quarterback standpoint, we were ready for that. And so, pulling back into what our quarterback could do and then really honing in. And I point to a lot of it. I know you guys have talked about it. I point to a lot of it. From San Jose State on, we really, I thought, became who we were capable of being. But I thought it showed me of how are we going to get the quarterback into a position where he's comfortable, relaxed, and can make all the throws that we're asking him to make. That was really, I thought, a turning point for us offensively from that point. And it was a bad game for us, but I felt it made me reevaluate. And so some of the stuff that I think we wanted to do kind of went away, and we went back to what we knew, A, what our quarterback could do, and B, what our personnel was in a position to do. And then let's just focus on what they're doing best. And I think we're building those packages to allow Jordan to do that. Is it somebody like Keenan? Jalen Armstead is somebody who, I think has to start to, really assert himself into being a power back role for us too. Cam is dynamic, but he's a young guy who's learning. So, just how are we going to put all those pieces together? And then how do they fit with what our quarterbacks are able to do, where the rest of the skill is, and being able to put all those pieces together now so we can get into that rhythm very quickly like we were after Sanho, if that makes sense.
Oh, it completely makes sense. Let's keep talking about Jalen a little bit. We just got done talking with recruit for 2023, which is crazy. And he was saying that Jalen was his host and was really just honest and great with all of that. But he is the biggest back on the roster at 220. Is there a short yardage goal line package that would be special to him, or is it just, getting in there and being able to, I guess, spell chance when the time comes?
Yeah. And I don't, I've never been a big believer in just, hey, this is our short yardage back. Cause I think you're pigeonholing, limiting, and you're making their mindset be one dimensional. Whereas I think it's more the second part of it where you say, okay, this is where he's going to spell chance. And this is, this is how Keenan fits and this is how Jordan fits. And then it's Jeff and I really sitting down and saying, okay, how are we going to make all this happen that one, Jeff, you're comfortable with, and I'm talking about Coach Horton, right. You're comfortable with where they're at. And then where our offense is comfortable with and being able to put them in the best position to be successful. And so, sometimes you put a kid in and it's 3rd and 1 and it's the first 3rd and 1 and his mindset goes away from, who I am as an athlete and what I do best. I got to get a yard. And then all of a sudden he plugs it up in there and he misses a cut and something happens. And then now you destroy the confidence, not only of him, but of, the offense and our rhythm. So we really try to keep everything in rhythm if we can, in terms of how we get them in the game, when we get them into the game, and then being able to get them in positions where they can be successful with the ball in their hands. But we really, Jalen really, I thought, had a really good spring, especially as we were coming through towards the middle to the end of the spring. And that's where I really thought he started to feel comfortable in everything that we're doing. But again, I think we look for big things from him in a progression way where you start to see his role build and build and build. And that's the same thing for Cam. Cam, really was dynamic and explosive at times throughout the course of spring. And you really saw, man, there's a reason why he's the leading rusher in the Dallas Metroplex area and really in the state of Texas, one of the leading rushers, in the state of Texas. You could really see that. And so, those progressions for those young kids, we expect to continue to build because it's only, you got to look at it. You go through fall camp, you go through 14, 15 games, which is what we're trying to play and what we're trying to get to. We're going to need them all. And we're going to need every one of them at some point in time throughout the course of a season to win us a football game.
Last question on the running backs. We couldn't leave without talking about Lucky Sutton. He is a fan favorite. A lot of them are expecting him to be able to push for time. Sheldon Canley has probably the best tape of, it's amazing how he's able to break things off like he does. So not necessarily speaking specifically about them, but in general, how quickly does a freshman have to step up to insert themselves legitimately in the competition?
Well, I think it's up to them. I think it would be up to both of them to insert themselves into that competition because the room is deep. And you do that by, when you're working out and when you're here during the summer, being in the top of the group as you're running and being one of those guys that really comes up to speed as fast as you can, to compete at that level. And then 2, from a knowledge standpoint, you live and die in football and you breathe it every day. So when you come to camp and you get your reps, you're being successful and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And then from there, your athletic ability takes over, in teams of past where maybe you weren't as deep or you weren't as far along in the program, you would need those guys to do that very quickly. Now you just don't know, because you don't know through injuries what happens. I mean, you go through years where, knock on wood, you don't have any injuries, but then you go through years where all of a sudden you become depleted at a position. And now all of a sudden you're moving pieces around, and that's where being versatile and having that ability to make those adjustments becomes important. And that's what we're preparing them for in being able to do that. So, we'll see. I think it's a lot like what we talked about with Keenan. We got to see them play, before we say you can do this or you can do, we got to see it, and giving them the freedom to be able just to go play and make mistakes sometimes, I think is the greatest thing you can do as a coach, because then you can see who they really are, see what they need to work on, see where we need to really, work with them on, and then get them up to speed as quickly as we can. And allowing them to be who they are and allowing them to be themselves.
Moving on to the receivers, you've got a very experienced top two with Jesse and Tyrell. The rest of the unit is fairly inexperienced. Is that a concern heading into fall camp?
No. I mean, I think in our day and age in football, I think there is going to be, there is some youth movement throughout the course of all this. I think our youth has a chance to be very productive. And also I think with the way that Coach Cooper coaches and the expectations that he has in that room, he'll bring them up to speed very quickly. We're blessed, and I mean, to be honest with you, one of my goals since I've come here is, you got to remember when I was here in 9 and 10, we had Vincent Brown with DeMarco Sampson. I want to get back to having that type of room and having two guys like that every year. And I think now coming into this season, we're blessed to have two guys like that in Jesse and Terrell that now will allow us to build that depth around them. Jesse and Terrell can play a 60-minute game and not blink. And now that gives you a chance to afford to build around them. And a guy that had a great spring for us was TJ Sullivan. And we're looking for huge things around TJ. So I think we got three there that really can go play a whole game and are versatile and can move all around. And so, and I think, if I'm not mistaken or not, I saw some publications where Jesse was an all Mountain West player, preseason all Mountain West player, and that should be who we are. I mean, you talk about those high expectations. My expectations coming in here was to build this to where we have a quarterback and a wideout now in that talk, along with having a running back, a tight end, and an offensive lineman or two. And now you're complete as an offense, and that's where we're headed.
Breon Penny is one of those guys. He made some headlines with his 3 touchdowns in the spring game. Coach Cooper told us that he's been helping, Breon mature on and off the field so that he's ready when his opportunity knocks. He's listed behind Tyrell at the X as the backup, while you mentioned TJ Sullivan as a starter at H. Where do you think he fits in, either potentially becoming a starter or like that fourth guy that's on the field for the number of snaps?
Well, I mean, if you look at us offensively, I'm huge on personnels and I'm huge on moving personnel, but I'm huge on having multiple personnel groups that not only get everybody involved, but make defenses have to defend, right? And so, you look at our 2-minute from, I think it was San Juan, our 2-minute was all 10 personnel with 4 wideouts on the field. We were in a little bit more 10 personnel as we started to move at certain times throughout the course of games too, where, I think Breon fits into that 10 personnel mode where you have, 4 wideouts on the field. And now you start to, with Braxton, I think we have the ability to build in, and get into empty stuff and things like that, where you're talking about having Breon in 4 wideouts and maybe, Mark Redmond as a tight end, where you go 4 wideouts and a tight end. And I'm not opposed to going 5 wideouts and empty. Again, if we have 5, if we have 5 where we can say, okay, hey, we got 5 to 10 plays here in this game where we can build into this now. And now defenses have to defend that. They have to decide, how are they going to do that, because they still have to defend Braxton and Will in the quarterback run game. So there's a lot of options and opportunities to be able to build that. but you're only building it. And again, I think that's what we just talked about a little bit after the Sandhill game. You're only building that in if the personnel is ready to do that. And I think that was my learning message coming out of Sandhill to myself was what are we ready to do? And then now if Breon keeps coming, he had a great spring. He's had a great summer so far. We need to continue to build him. Then, yeah, let's go. If we got a fifth, let's go. We'll find ways to get him on the field, build them into packages, and start to build that depth and get them confidence. Again, how do you put our players in a position to be successful? Because when they get on the field, you want them to have success, not on the practice field, but on the game field, because Saturdays are the only days that matter. And so you want them to start to have success that way. Somebody like Mekhi Shaw was somebody last season where when he got on the field, we were building him into a position to have success. And then, now, we go through the injuries and we go through all that stuff, but Mekhi came in and started to have a great spring. And, now it's just building him into that same type of role that we're building Breon in. So we're looking for big things from a lot of these young guys and building them into having success.
I think, talking about matching the personnel with the players that you have, Sullivan is a little bit different physically than the other players who play the H. While he can obviously play inside or out, what does he bring to that position? And tell us a little bit more about how he's really had a great spring and came on.
Well, he brings a physicality to the inside part of it because of his size and his length, right? And that's what you're talking about when you look at where we were a year ago with Buzz and with Ethan, as opposed to now having TJ in there and creating mismatches there. And Buzz and Ethan were able to create mismatches, in the intermediate, the short game, especially really in the RPO game is where, you could use their quickness and their speed. Well, now TJ, we can get matched up a little bit more vertically down the field and have a little bit bigger of a target that allows Braxton and Will and our quarterbacks, some room for error in terms of throwing those balls down the field. His versatility of being inside, outside, TJ had one catch last year. It probably was the most important catch in our season.
Yeah.
And that was the 2-minute drive at Nevada where he put us into field goal range and he broke a tackle, gained about an extra 5, 6, 7 yards, which made it a chip shot for Matt. And sometimes it's not the number of catches, it's the quality and the pressure of the situation that you have. And you looked at TJ at that point in time and you're like, okay. And then now coming through the spring, he did that same thing in the spring game. And we were fourth down. Kyle Crum was quarterback. We were fourth down. We were kind of moving and we hit him on that exact same route, one-on-one coverage for a huge fourth down conversion where we went down and scored. And so you look at TJ and he produces at moments where the pressure is at its highest. And now, he's going to get the opportunity to do that on a consistent level, throughout the course of a game now for 60 minutes. And so, those are all things that we're looking for. You're looking for Breon to continue to build off that. You're looking for Mekhi to build off that. You're looking for TJ to build off that. Now you're talking about having 5, that add with Jesse and Terrell, to make the beginnings of, a very nice core of wide receivers that can be dangerous.
I'd like to add one more to that potentially. You've already touched on it before. Jordan Bird, he does profile like Buzz. He does profile, like Ethan. Does he have the ability to not be a running back, but to legitimately be that H receiver who can be in the RPO game, who can, maybe catch a ball here or there on a route, et cetera?
Yes. That's what I envision for him. And that's what I envision for all of our guys is to be multiple in that way. That's the great thing about Jesse and Terrell is they can play anywhere on the field. TJ can play anywhere on the field, and it can happen at a moment's notice. That's what we did in the bowl game. If you look at what we did in the bowl game, Buzz ended up playing a lot of single wide receiver. And Jesse and Terrell ended up moving all over the place between being in the slot and also being on the same side. And so, that flexibility, that's what we're trying to get to and trying to build. And now we have more pieces that are becoming more comfortable in those roles. They have to be comfortable in it. Our quarterback has to be comfortable with it. And then, it's my job then to be able to design it to be able to get them there. And so that's why, we talk a lot about it. You hear me say, just let them play. Just let me see them play. Just let us see them play. Until we go play, we don't know. And that's what practice is for. Sometimes you feel bad coming out of practice, like you didn't have a great practice. But when you go back and watch the film, you had a great practice because you're seeing those guys starting to get comfortable in those roles. And yeah, it's not consistent yet, but you're building towards that consistency and being ready to play against Arizona and having the personnel right at Arizona. So when we get there now, we're able to hit on all cylinders and be explosive.
Okay, you brought it up. I want to see if I can use the terminology right. Why did Buzz move to the gift?
No, that's okay. Okay, so
was I close?
You're close.
All right.
The gift is the backside of the RPO. Okay, but it can be any. It depends on if the RPO, what side the RPO is on. The gift is opposite the RPO. Okay, so what we were doing, and we actually, to be honest with you, this was all set up for Utah State. But then we lost all of our tight ends through the COVID deal, and we had no tight ends. So we had to adjust the entire game plan on Wednesday, and we had to actually take everything we did in the bowl game came out, and we had to go to 10 and 20 personnel because we had no tight ends. If you remember, we were playing 7 offensive linemen to just try and create something in that realm to not lose who we were at certain times. So everything then went back into the bowl game. It was all matchups. It's all matchups. It's all how do we create matchups now to put guys in different positions that they have to defend. And so, we thought, okay, if we get Jesse Terrell lined up on the same side, and we had Eli at the time, we had Kobe Smith coming back. If we can get those guys all on the same side, and if they want to push coverage and leave Buzz one-on-one on a corner, then we'll take that matchup. It was a good matchup for us. And if they want to roll coverage to Buzz, then we're going to get, essentially Jesse and Terrell with light coverage to the 2 wide receiver sides. So, those are all things that we're looking at and talking about as we come through the course of game planning. And so really during that time, everything we had practice and reps Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of Utah State, we just put it back in for the bowl game. And repped it for the bowl game because we'd already known it. In fact, the bowl game prep was actually probably for our players one of the simplest preps because we had already repped it. They already knew it. They already understood it. And it was just now getting the personnel back, getting our tight ends back healthy to be able to go run it.
There you have it. That was part 2 of our conversation with Coach Heck, centered around the wide receivers and the running backs in the room. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation, and we will be back for part 3 of our conversation with Coach Heck in our next episode, which will focus on the tight ends and the offensive line. Make sure to check that one out when it comes out very soon. You are listening to the SDSU Football Podcast, presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagverdian and Paul Garrison.